when this regulatory cloud is lifted and we get some policy clarity in the US, we will then be the most trusted source for enterprise support for crypto solutions.
The most trusted solution for enterprise support for crypto solutions in the US, not just cross-border payments, not just real-world asset tokenization, but all crypto solutions. And guys, if you didn't believe it, the real-world asset tokenization is a massive market. Here we have a report from McKinsey, one of the most respected consulting agencies in the world. Tokenization, the process of creating a unique digital representation of an asset on a blockchain network, has reached a tipping point after many years. Okay, we're about to see massive adoption in this space. The digitization of assets seems even more inevitable now as technology matures and demonstrates measurable economic benefits. Despite this momentum, broad adoption is still far away. That's what they say. Modernizing existing infrastructure is challenging, right? It takes a lot of time for these big banks to innovate. They've been using this same infrastructure for decades, especially in a regulation-heavy industry such as financial services. Overcoming inertia requires coordination across the value chain. Given this, we expect this adoption of tokenization to occur in multiple waves. Based on our analysis, we expect that the tokenized market cap could reach around $2 trillion by 2030. I think it'll surpass this greatly, excluding big cryptos like Bitcoin and stablecoins like Tether. This will be driven by adoption in mutual funds, bonds, and exchange-traded notes, ETNs, loans and securitization, and alternative funds. In a bullish scenario, this value could double to around $4 trillion, but we are less optimistic than previously published estimates as we approach the middle of the decade. Everything will be on the blockchain, and Ripple is not only positioned well in the United States, but all over the world. In XRP, once again, on the weekly chart, you can see right here, we're sitting right around 58 cents, the 60-cent range, but we've talked about this many times before. There's not a better chart in crypto where there's been 6 years of accumulation, and we have this massive bull flag pendant where XRP is going to break out to higher than $1 range. And speaking of the election coming up, look at these massive price increases. I think we all know when we go to the supermarkets how much the prices have increased. I'm just speaking from someone who's in the USA, but I'm sure in your country you've seen this as well. Chicken breast up 60%, eggs doubled in price, bananas up 50%. Pretty much everything has increased in price. And then they ask these candidates, well, how are you going to fix the economy when for the past 4 years, one of these candidates has in a lot of ways caused these price increases. Now, I won't relinquish Donald Trump of any faults either, because during COVID-19, which I can't talk about on YouTube, they printed the most money in the shortest time in U.S. history. And what do you think happens when they print the most money in the shortest time in history? Wow, so surprising. Inflation went out of control. Really quick, guys, my last video, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because it's the first time in a while I showed my face. But it was the best video I've had in a long time. 70 new subscribers, so thank you guys for that massive support on the channel. It really makes me happy and motivated. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you for everyone that supports the video. Hit that like button if you want to support. It gives me feedback, lets me know I'm not wasting your time, and I really do appreciate it. And China has joined the Federal Reserve in a huge macro event. They say is 70K next for Bitcoin. China matched the Federal Reserve and announced a 50 basis point cut in its reserve requirement ratios, the amount of funds banks must hold in the reserve. The signals that monetary policy easing, as announced by both the US Fed and the European Central Bank, among others this month, is becoming a global phenomenon. The result of this is music to the ears of crypto bulls. A forecast wave of global easing helping facilitate an influx of capital into risk assets, and China matching the Federal Reserve's 50 basis point cut suggests a continued wave of global easing that's going to provide strong support for asset prices in the near term. But what happens in the long term? Keep in mind, guys, we have 7 times higher unrealized losses by U.S. banks compared to the 2008 financial crisis. You can see back here in the 2008 financial crisis, there was about 70 billion in unrealized losses by these banks. And you can see this chart has absolutely exploded. One, because of inflation, right? There's so much more money in the market right now. It has to go somewhere. But also because these banks have made terrible decisions. How does a bank work? A bank takes calculated risk to make a calculated return. In 2008, these banks took risks way out of their risk. What's the word? They took way too big of risk in 2008, right? And what did they do? They got in a lot of trouble. And instead of facing the consequence and just taking a bunch of losses, instead the government gave them money and bailed them out, right? When a kid does wrong, you need to correct the behavior, not just give them no consequence, because then let's repeat that behavior, right? It's like when you put your hand on a hot oven, you get the burn and then you learn. These banks were never given a consequence. So what have they done over the past 14 years? They continued to make terrible decisions. They continued to make risky bets to the tune of negative $700 billion in unrealized losses. And it makes sense because we never gave them a consequence back in '08, and now they're just doing what they did back before in a different way. In 2008, they coupled mortgage-backed securities, and now they're doing similar stuff with other instruments, but this is a very telling chart. I don't know how it ends. The Dow Jones broke through a 125-year resistance trend line. In 1929, it broke through for 1 month before beginning the negative 90% collapse over the next 3 years. The Federal Reserve also just cut interest rates for the first time in a few years. Look throughout history, what happens every time the Federal Reserve does the first rate cut. And normally they do a 0.25 basis point rate cut. This time they did a 50 basis point rate cut because the market is so troubled. Every time they do these rate cuts, what follows? A market correction, okay? Look, it happened in 1980, it happened in 2000, it happened in 2008. It's going to happen now. And you can see the market's already starting to do that, breaking through this resistance trend line. And I'm just telling you this not to spread fear and uncertainty and doubt. I'm just showing you the historical patterns. Interest rate cuts lead to bullish trends, but first there is a market correction, and we're going to see that definitely. Another great graphic right here. When the consumer price index returns to its trend, it's going to make 2008 look like child's play. 1929, Great Depression, is the only comparable scenario. And you can see here the consumer price index, when it goes away from the trend line, it always corrects back to that trend line. And when it does, you see a market crash, a market pullback. The interesting thing about why this time is so different is we've never had this kind of inflation in my lifetime. Now, I'm a younger guy, I'm just turned, young 30s. But you can see the CPI as the biggest gap. I don't know how long this chart goes, but it begins in the 70s. We've never seen a disparity like this, okay? But it's just another hint. We're going to see a crash soon. I already talked about this here, this massive 6-year bull flag. Where does XRP go from here? I know it sounds crazy when I say $15, $30 XRP, but these assets, especially in crypto when there's explosive gains, can do things like this. FOMO is crazy, and when XRP starts to get near its all-time highs again, it's going to explode past that. We just need to get past this 60-cent barrier and break out of this wedge. In Bitwise, Chief Investment Officer says the most powerful people in finance are allocating crypto. Another example, traditional finance is here. The adoption is beginning, and 2025 is going to be an explosive bull run. Here we have an analyst saying, regardless of the elections, Bitcoin and crypto will surge. Matthew Siegel, head of digital asset research at Van Eck, asserts that the U.S. federal election will significantly influence crypto, but ultimately it's going to be bullish for Bitcoin. Indicates that both candidates, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, harbor potential benefits, albeit with different implications. He notes that both candidates are likely to maintain or even increase fiscal spending. And it makes sense because the president has no control over the fake Federal Reserve. You guys know the Federal Reserve is actually private. It's not federal at all. That is the epitome of American ignorance, in my opinion. Maybe some people that are older on my channel already know the Federal Reserve and all the shadiness of Jekyll Island and how it was created, and how after the creation of the Federal Reserve, the U.S. debt went absolutely exponential to the moon. It's the epitome of American ignorance. No one knows that the people that control the whole economy have nothing to do with the government. And the Federal Reserve is going to do what the Federal Reserve wants to do. Doesn't really matter who the president is because they don't control the economy. The Fed does. And Mr. Man XRP with a great find here. I'm not sure where. Oh yeah, it says right here, Rutgers Law School. This is Stuart Alderati talking for about 2 minutes, and he basically exposes the Ripple versus SEC setup. Take a listen.
Crypto asset securities and a market for crypto asset securities. That's like saying there's an orange grove security, or orange is part of securities. And when it comes to investment contracts, you look at the transaction. So this is what's so important about the decision, and this is one of the decisions landmark in this country, is the court found that the token itself cannot embody the attributes of an investment contract that's contemplated by Howard. So the token itself is not the security. Certain transactions involving that token may be investment contracts, but the token divorced from that transaction is nothing but a token, just like the orange is divorced from the Orange Grove Collective, and that promise between the seller and the buyer are just oranges. That's what makes this decision so important. We would have liked her to go so far as to find that you needed a contract for an investment, for there to be an investment contract. But she said she felt she didn't have the power to go that far as a district court judge. But coincidentally, she only found an investment contract in those instances where there was a contract. So even though she said, I'm not going to go that far, if you actually read the opinion, she kind of did cabin the opinion.
So this is important because you have District Judge Annalisa Torres, who presided over the Ripple lawsuit, saying that for a crypto to be an investment contract, there must be some sort of contract, but she claimed she couldn't go that far. She didn't have authority. But then she also said the only securities that she found have investment contracts had a literal contract. So she basically gave us the precedent that we already had. And here's how XRP directly helps with these new Basel III capital requirements. These are rules that banks have to follow. Basically, Ripple addresses these liquidity challenges faced by banks, and through using XRP as a bridge asset, it allows banks to eliminate the need for these nostro accounts. And if you don't know what nostro accounts are, pay attention because this is very important. They section this teleporting gold, so why should banks care? Because Ripple plans to use XRP to solve their massive liquidity problems. As it stands right now, banks around the world must hold billions of dollars in reserve. And banks want to use this money to make a return, right? They make calculated risk to make calculated returns. They have billions in reserves that they can't even leverage, waiting to use them for payments. When one bank needs to send money across borders, it uses the dead cash it is holding at the foreign institution to which it is sending funds, either the final recipient or the intermediary. The whole process involves counterparty risk, which banks don't like. They want to minimize risk, and the expensive vetting procedures that go along with it. This dormant cash is all the more wasteful in a world of Basel III requirements. It counts as yet another balance sheet asset against which a bank has to hold more cash to cover its liability. Ripple's big idea is to use XRP. Once a market cap gets high enough and it's being traded heavily enough to provide banks with liquidity on the demand. So this goes into the story of why XRP's price must be high. They say once its market cap gets high enough. Market cap is a simple metric. You take the price of the asset times it by the volume. And for the market cap of XRP to be high, we need a higher price. For these big institutions to be able to send billions of dollars instantly, the price must be high of XRP, because if not, when they send these billion-dollar transactions, there's going to be massive price impact. And when sending billions of dollars, a small percentage price impact, 3%, could end up being $30 million, $300 million in slippage. So the price must be high for these banks to be able to use XRP the way it was designed to be used. Really quick, if you guys need a spot to get XRP or Flare and you want to support the channel, check out Uphold. It's where I get my XRP daily. There's a link to Uphold in the video description below. And if you enjoy my content, check out my free Telegram. In the future, I might cost money for this, but for right now, it's free. So if you guys like talking about crypto and other current events and you use Telegram, it's in the video description below. And I'm just trying to get more of my community in there. And there was recently this hearing, SEC Chairman and Hester Pierce, a congressman, grilling each other on crypto regulation by enforcement and lack of clarity. I'm going to leave this with you guys. Thanks again for watching the video and all the support on the channel. If you guys like this type of content, subscribe. And if you made it this far in the video, comment XRP community. Thank you for giving me 15 minutes of your day, and let me know you're a loyal viewer and made it this far by commenting XRP community. It truly does mean a lot to me, so thank you in advance.
Agriculture and Financial Services Committee sent you a letter about the regulatory treatment for Ether, the native token of the Ethereum blockchain. In the letter, we express concern the SEC is using different terms to describe digital assets. This includes crypto tokens, crypto security tokens, crypto asset securities, digital asset securities, and digital asset securities that are investment contracts. Does the SEC differentiate between crypto tokens and tokenized securities?
Whether any one offer or sale of an asset is a security depends on the facts and circumstances. In terms of the language or nomenclature, it's less about the terms, it's more about the economics. And it really goes down to a Supreme Court test, which is the law of the land, called the Howey test. And whether an investment contract is being offered and sold to the public, and that public is looking to others in a common enterprise, anticipating a profit. So the labels matter less than what the economics are.
But there are different terms, and words have meaning. And the fact that you've used multiple different words to explain what seems to be the same phenomenon, I think really raises questions about clarity.
Well, the laws are clear, and it's written by the Supreme Court, but also...
The laws are clear, but what we're seeing from the SEC is a lack of clarity. That's what I'm trying to ask you about. You have no... the direct question is about the different terms, and rather than answering that question, you answered a separate question. Kudos to you. Commissioner Peirce, let's get into this question. Do you think that one reason why multiple terms are being used here for crypto is that there's no regulatory clarity or consensus identifying which tokens may or may not be offered pursuant to an investment contract?
I think that's absolutely true. We've taken a legally imprecise view to mask the regulatory lack of clarity.
So this question of an investment contract, the SEC defined crypto asset securities as an investment contract represented by the underlying crypto asset. Yet, tucked away in a footnote and on an amended complaint, the SEC clarified a security is determined by the, quote, contracts, expectations, and understandings centered on the sales and distribution of a digital asset, and not that the digital asset itself is a security. Is the SEC using inconsistent standards here? I mean, is that what's happening?
I think what's happening is that we're trying to be ambiguous because the legal precision carries with it real implications. And this is why people have been coming to us and saying we need clarity. Is the token itself a security? Or is it part of an investment contract? Is it being sold together with an investment contract? If it is, what is that investment contract and how long does it track along with the token? By using imprecise language, we've been able to sort of suggest that the token itself is a security apart from that investment contract, which has implications for secondary sales. It has implications for who can list it. And I think this is absolutely, we've fallen down on our duty as a regulator not to be precise. And so tucking into a footnote that, yes, we admit that now actually the token itself is not a security, that's something that we should have admitted long ago and then started wrestling with the difficult questions.
Okay. So would a statutory definition provide that clarity for the agency? Or is this something the agency can do itself?
We certainly have authority where we can provide guidance. We can use our exemptive authority. It's always helpful to have Congress weigh in, but there certainly are some guidelines we could provide in this area that we have chosen not to provide.
But a statutory definition would help.
Well, I always welcome the input of Congress.
That's fantastic.